Imagine Mercury, the smallest and closest planet to the Sun, being struck by a massive comet. This event would be nothing short of catastrophic, altering not only the planet itself, but potentially impacting the entire solar system. To understand the full scope of what would happen, we need to break down the science behind collisions in space, how Mercury would react, and what the consequences would be. So, let's dive into what would happen if a comet slammed into Mercury, sending molten rock flying into space. What are comets, and why are they dangerous? Comets are often referred to as dirty snowballs. They're made of rock, ice, and dust, and travel at incredibly high speeds, often tens of kilometers per second. While they may seem small compared to planets, the immense speed at which they travel gives them a lot of energy. When a comet collides with a planet, it's like dropping a bomb, but on an astronomical scale. The energy released during such an impact can be compared to the force of millions of nuclear bombs going off simultaneously. This energy is enough to melt rock, create massive craters, and even change the atmosphere of a planet. The larger and faster the comet, the more devastating the impact. In Mercury's case, being such a small planet with little atmosphere, it would face even more dramatic consequences. Mercury, a quick overview. Mercury is a unique planet. It is the smallest in our solar system and the closest to the Sun, which makes it incredibly hot during the day and freezing cold at night. Its surface is covered in craters, much like our Moon, because it has almost no atmosphere to protect it from impacts. Over billions of years, Mercury has been bombarded by asteroids, meteoroids, and comets, but a significant comet strike would be on an entirely different level. Mercury's core is made of metal, primarily iron, and its outer shell is rocky. The planet's gravitational pull is weak compared to Earth's, and because it lacks a thick atmosphere, any debris or molten rock ejected during a collision could escape into space more easily than it would from a planet like Earth. The immediate impact, explosion, and molten rock. Now imagine a massive comet barreling toward Mercury at a speed of 50 kilometers per second. Upon impact, the energy released would be so immense that it would vaporize the comet and instantly melt the surface of Mercury where the collision occurred. The crater left behind would likely be hundreds or even thousands of kilometers wide, much larger than any crater on Earth. The heat from the impact would be so intense that it would melt a significant portion of Mercury's rocky surface. Molten rock, also known as magma, would be blasted into the sky. Because Mercury has such weak gravity, much of this molten material would escape into space, forming a glowing cloud of debris surrounding the planet. Some of this material might even get pulled into the Sun's gravity, while other chunks could drift around the solar system. For a brief moment, Mercury might appear like a volcanic world, with glowing molten rock spewing into space and scattering in all directions. This would make Mercury a temporarily more dynamic and violent place than it has been for billions of years. The formation of a debris cloud. The collision would launch not only molten rock, but also a cloud of dust and debris into space. This cloud could form a temporary ring around Mercury, much like the rings of Saturn, but far less stable. Over time, this ring could spread out and either fall back onto Mercury or drift away into space. If the comet were large enough, the debris cloud might be visible from Earth, especially with telescopes. Scientists on Earth could study this event in real time, learning more about the composition of Mercury's surface and the nature of the collision. The debris cloud would also pose potential risks to other planets or even spacecraft in the vicinity. Effects on Mercury's orbit and rotation. Mercury is already in an unusual orbit. It rotates very slowly on its axis, completing one day every 58 Earth days, and its orbit around the Sun is highly elliptical. A massive impact like a comet strike could alter both its rotation and orbit. The energy from the impact could change the speed at which Mercury spins, either slowing it down or speeding it up slightly. The impact could also shift Mercury's orbit, making it more or less elliptical, depending on the angle and speed of the collision. This shift could have ripple effects throughout the solar system, especially on the orbits of Venus and Earth, which are relatively close to Mercury. If the impact were strong enough, it might even cause Mercury to tilt on its axis. Right now, Mercury has almost no axial tilt, meaning it doesn't experience seasons the way Earth does. A tilt could introduce seasons to the planet, though they would likely be extreme given Mercury's proximity to the Sun. Long-term changes to Mercury's surface. The long-term consequences for Mercury's surface would be dramatic. The impact would create a new, massive crater, likely larger than any existing ones. Over time, this crater would cool, but it would leave a permanent scar on the planet. Depending on how much molten rock was blasted away, the surface of Mercury could be thinned in some areas, possibly exposing more of its metal core. Mercury's surface might also be coated in a layer of fine dust from the debris cloud, changing its reflective properties. Right now, Mercury reflects a lot of sunlight, but a layer of dark dust could make it appear dimmer from Earth. Potential effects on the solar system. While the direct impact would mainly affect Mercury, the ripple effects could extend far beyond the planet. The debris ejected into space could become a hazard for other planets, moons, or even spacecraft. Pieces of Mercury could drift into the orbits of Venus or Earth, potentially causing meteor showers or even small impacts on those planets. There's also the possibility that Mercury's orbit could change in such a way that it affects the orbits of other planets. Even a small shift in Mercury's position could, over millions of years, lead to larger changes in the solar system's stability. Could life be affected? While Mercury itself is barren and lifeless, a large enough impact could have indirect effects on life elsewhere in the solar system. For example, if the debris cloud from the impact reached Earth, it could create spectacular meteor showers, but it could also pose a threat to satellites or space stations. There's even a small chance that a chunk of Mercury could collide with Earth, though this is highly unlikely. A fiery end and a new beginning for Mercury? If a comet were to strike Mercury, it would be an explosive, fiery event that would forever change the planet. Molten rock would fly into space, creating a temporary cloud of debris, and the surface of the planet would be reshaped by the impact. While Mercury itself would bear the brunt of the damage, the ripple effects could extend throughout the solar system, potentially even affecting Earth in subtle ways. Such an event would be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for scientists to observe planetary collisions in real time, offering new insights into the dynamics of our solar system. For Mercury, it would be a violent transformation, marking the end of one era and the beginning of another.